Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the very first episode of the Culture Feeds podcast. I am your host, Yaparoni. Guys, let me just first tell you how many times I've tried to film this damn episode. Because this is the first episode, I do feel a little bit of pressure. I'm not going to lie. So I've just tried to film this so many times, and then I was also filming the video part of it, and at a certain point I was just like, "Oh my god, I'm never going to fucking get this done. I'm crashing out." I've filmed this 3 times at this point. I've recorded it 3 times and it just wasn't giving what it was supposed to give. So I just decided that this first episode is going to be audio only because I wasn't doing anything interactive for the first episode anyway. You guys will see what I mean when I say interactive. I'm going to be making this a video podcast, but this one in particular is kind of just me talking, having a conversation with y'all, letting y'all into, I guess, my lore a little bit when it comes to pop culture, when it comes to my stan fangirl history. It's gonna be talking a little bit about how I came to love pop culture and just letting you guys in on the things that built my taste and my interests. And you're not gonna have to know this to listen to my future episodes of the podcast, but I think it just gives you a bit more context into who I am and what built me and what built my interests. So I thought it would be really interesting to look at my entire pop culture timeline or my fangirl history. It's not an original experience to be a chronically online fangirl, but that is my life. It's also very interesting because I think every chronically online fangirl has a different niche. There's different ways that you navigate the media and the internet, and we all have different interests. So I kind of wanted to go through mine. Okay, so I divided this based on the years. So, just a little context for you guys. I'm a Korean American, but I'm not actually American. I wasn't born in America. I moved to the US when I was 4, and then I moved back and forth from the US and Korea pretty much throughout my entire life. We're going to start the year I first moved to the US, which was 2006, and I was 4 years old. So, we're going to do this in 2 to 4 year increments. First, we're going to do from 2006 to 2008. And I start in 2006 because I feel like this is the age also for me where I'm sentient of what I'm consuming, for example, before I moved to the US, I was watching a lot of kids shows in Korea, but I don't remember those, honestly. I don't really remember what kind of influence the TV that I was watching back then had. And for me, I haven't ever lived in a world before the internet, but I did live in a world where the internet wasn't the primary form of media consumption. So, 2006 to 2008, we start off with TV and radio being my primary forms of media consumption. So, we'll start off with radio, honestly, because I feel like if you are a fangirl, if you've grown up being a fangirl or a fanboy or a fan person, I feel like you always have one icon in your life, one celebrity that throughout your whole life you've just loved them and you can't not love them. And for me, that was Rihanna. Rihanna is my girl down. I truly am obsessed with her. I love her. She is such she we're going to definitely talk about her in a couple episodes soon, but I could really talk about Rihanna all day. I think she is so, so, so important to pop culture. I think she is so influential. She is truly, truly the definition of an icon to me. Yeah, I don't remember exactly the first time I've listened to her music, but it had to be either, I think it was SOS or Ponde Replay. I don't remember which one exactly. I also loved Beyonce a lot. I know that there was a bit of a rivalry between them, the media would always do that, but I also loved Beyonce. I think the first song that I heard from her was to the left, everything you own in the box to the left. I didn't know that song was called Irreplaceable until years later. I thought it was called To the Left. but I loved that song as well. Some honorable mentions, I would say, just overall, like, I just remember hearing on the radio constantly. It would be like Justin Timberlake with Timbaland and Nelly Furtado, the Pussycat Dolls, Lady Gaga, Britney Spears, Gwen Stefani, Katy Perry, Black Eyed Peas, Chris Brown, like all these amazing artists. Fuck Chris Brown, but I can't deny that he was very, very big at this time and also extremely influential to my music taste. So if you look at this group of artists, you can also see that it's very like R&B heavy as well. So like if you look at my music taste to this day, it's very pop R&B hip hop influenced because that's what I grew up listening to. These artists like truly I can't say enough about them because they're truly so influential. Like Lady Gaga, hello, Britney Spears. And what's crazy is with Britney Spears, I will definitely do an episode on her as well. But the first songs I remember hearing from her were from Circus era, like Circus, Womanizer, If You Seek Amy. I didn't really listen to her older music that was like her peak, quote unquote, until much later when we get into the iTunes era and the digital downloading era. But I loved her. I thought she was so cool. I thought Katy Perry was so cool. But the other side of this is like mainstream pop. But on the other side of it was Disney, Disney Channel, and Nickelodeon. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Okay. So now we're going to move on to TV for a little bit. So just to give a bit of backstory, since my parents were from Korea and they also were military, they were both military. So they're not really big pop culture heads at all. I did not gain any type of influence within my pop culture taste through my parents. No, I did it all myself. I found this shit all by myself. I actually discovered Nickelodeon first. That was the first channel that I found on cable. So I was watching a lot of Drake and Josh, and there was also Zoe 101 and The Amanda Show. But out of those three, I would say that I remember Drake and Josh the most. Like, I have the most attachment, like nostalgic attachment to them. I remember the episodes the most.
You were supposed to cut it out with the power saw.
Dude, I'm gonna.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So go get the power saw.
Okay, I will. I see the problem.
Oh, do ya?
And then I remember when iCarly first came out and Victorious, Big Time Rush. Like, those were all such great shows and I loved them. Also, guys, if you watch back Big Time Rush now, you can see how fucking ridiculous that show is. Like, the amount of sound effects that they would add on that show was just bonkers. But Nickelodeon had this thing where they had like a whole day of play or something where they would turn off all programming and just have a black screen and be like, you guys need to go outside and stop being stuck to your screens, go outside and play. And I was like, fuck you, I'm gonna go find another channel. So I started flipping the channels and I found Disney Channel. And that is when I first discovered Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. That's what was playing when I first found Disney Channel. I still remember the episode. It was like the episode where they were chefing it up in the hotel restaurant or something.
Need salt. Needs pepper. This is terrible. It's dishwater. Need soap.
But I loved Sweet Life of Zack and Cody. I loved Hannah Montana. I remember the first episode of Wizards of Waverly Place coming out. I remember when Sweet Life on Deck came out. I also loved Sunny with the Chance. I loved Camp Rock, High School Musical, all this gold coming out of Disney Channel, genuinely. And Cheetah Girls was my first ever concert, which is wild. Crazy little story. We had to drive like an hour to this venue, and we, as in me and my dad, and it was snowing a lot. So my dad had to put these chains on the tires so that we don't like slip and shit. And so he took me to this concert, and I didn't know what an opening act was at the time. And these girls called the Click Girls were opening up for the Cheetah Girls. And they came on the stage and I was like, "What the fuck is this?" My first grade ass was pissed. I was literally like, "This is not what I wanted. Like, what do you mean the Click Girls are here? Like, who even is that? Where are the Cheetah Girls? Like, get them on the stage now." I was so upset. And my dad, I feel like he seemed worried too, because obviously he doesn't know either. Like, he's never been to a concert. I remember giving my dad so much shit at the time because I was like, "This is not what I asked for. Like, what?" And then the Cheetah Girls came out, and I was very happy. Unfortunately, Raven Simone was not on this tour. I think it's because this was when they were promoting the third final movie. And I remember Adrian Bailon like waving at me. I still very much remember that, and it was very very fun. And I didn't know until years later that Adrian and Keely Williams are from 3LW. Like, I didn't know that they were like a whole separate group before the Cheetah Girls. Like, I literally had no idea, which was very interesting lore to learn later on. But yeah, they like Disney Channel just had so many hits. You know, today, actually, the day I'm recording this, the 20th anniversary of Hannah Montana just came out, and it was so literally I didn't watch the actual special because I don't have Disney Plus, but I watched the clip of Miley recreating that scene where she leaves her house and she like kisses it and she does the little kiss wave, and she recreated it, and literally watching her do that like made me tear up low key. Like, I am such a sucker for nostalgia, bro. But anyway, Disney Channel, iconic High School Musical. We'll revisit that later on, but I loved High School Musical down. Like, it was such a good fucking trilogy. The fact that the final movie was like in theaters, iconic. I invited all of my friends to go watch it on the premiere day without even asking my parents for permission, but they obviously let us go anyway. Also, the music in High School Musical, genuinely such good music. Like, I feel like people don't take it seriously because it's obviously coming from Disney, but that shit was so good. Like, oh my god, I could talk about it for hours on hours on hours. And just like the lore behind everyone, like Demi and Selena, Princess Protection Program, but then Selena and Miley had beef because they were dating Nick Jonas, and Joe Jonas and Demi, and Kevin's just there with his guitar and shit. Like, oh my god, so much lore. And then the Send It On song, do you guys remember that? The song about recycling, like all six of them. And then Disney Channel original movies, my god, Wendy Wu, Jump In. Oh my god, there's so many other ones. Camp Rock, Freaky Friday. Oh my god, there's just like so many iconic movies from Disney, and I love it. I love it. I love it. There was a time when I got Disney Plus for the first time. We're definitely going to get into the streaming era later, but like I just remember rewatching all of these fucking movies. Like, a lot of them are fucking stupid. I can't lie. Like, I rewatched Princess Protection Program last year. That shit did not make any sense. Like, the storyline did not make no fucking sense, but it was still so fun. Like, Gen Z, we have it rough right now, but I will say our childhoods were peak for sure. Like, core Gen Z, growing up with Disney Channel like that, like at its peak, so good. So when I started kind of aging out of Disney per se, around the time when like Jessie, Good Luck Charlie, Shake It Up, like those shows, when they were still running, like I don't remember seeing the end of them, but I do remember watching a couple episodes, you know what I mean? Or like the beginnings of like Austin and Ally, you know? I didn't I wasn't really into Austin and Ally ever, to be honest. But Jessie, Good Luck Charlie, Shake It Up, like I remember that era, but I don't remember when it ended because I was already like kind of out of it, you know what I mean? Later on, I am more engaged with YouTube. I also start changing the TV channels, and then we also get iTunes. When you are looking at your own pop culture history, I want you guys to look at like how technology advances because it's really interesting, especially Gen Z. You can literally see how fast technology is advancing through the way that you remember how you engage with pop culture. So like Right now I'm talking about TV and radio, even though the internet obviously existed. Like I remember there like us always having a computer and everything, but I wasn't going on the computer really that much, at least around this age. I started going on the computer a little later, and this is where we're going to move and segue into 2009 to 2012 ish. With YouTube, I remember me using YouTube casually on the computer, but this is around the time when I start using it on like an iPod Touch or like an iPhone. You know what I mean? You know how Gen Alpha gets a lot of shit from us because they're always talking about Skibbity Toilet, Riz, 6'7", whatever. But honestly, we had the same thing. Like we had Annoying Orange, we had Fred, we had Shane Dawson, like we had like so many stupid brain rot content that we were watching on the internet too. Like
Hey, Apple! Apple! Hey! Hey, Apple!
and so I like to give Gen Alpha grace because like we were watching shit that didn't make sense, but it was so stupid, but it was funny. Like that's just how it is when you're a kid, you know? And some other things on YouTube that were really big, like Ryan Higa. I loved watching Ryan Higa. I loved Smosh. And I also think it's really interesting that around this time, of course, YouTube was already existent in like the 2006 to 2008 era that we talked about. But I think 2009 to 2012 was really when YouTubers became a thing, like YouTubers, and they were actually creating videos to like create online community. And that's when it really started on YouTube, was around this time in 2009 to 2012 era. And also, I would like to mention that I never had a MySpace. I was not during that time. I was not old enough to have a MySpace. I it was not my time. But I also am kind of jealous that I missed that. I feel like that was such a pivotal social media platform that I feel like never was able to make a comeback in any sort of way, which I feel like it should have. I loved watching music videos and music video parodies. Oh my goodness, let's talk about music videos because this was around the time when we're not watching music videos on MTV. Like I kind of missed that era. That was like not my time. I also missed the TRL era, which I honestly am very jealous of from millennials because I wish we had MTV. I wish we were able to look at MTV as like our gateway to pop music, to popular celebrities and things like that. But unfortunately, or not so unfortunately, we still got another era of MTV where it's like reality TV, which we'll get into. I loved finding music videos on YouTube. And it was so fun. And this was also when people still gave a fuck about music videos. Like it was a big deal when a music video would come out. You know what I mean? So some of the ones that I remember the most are a lot of Lady Gaga music videos because they were so weird. They were so like controversial or inappropriate, quote unquote. And so I remember watching Telephone and being like, oh my God, what is this? I was watching Paparazzi, Poker Face. I was watching Kesha. Oh my God, the amount of Kesha TikTok parodies. It was just such a time.
This behavior's a dead end, and P. Diddy is not your friend. You'll end up like Lindsay Lohan. Low.
This is whack. I feel trapped.
We want the old Kesha back.
Truly, music video parodies were almost just as influential as the actual music videos. Like, it was so funny. It was so good back then. And we don't really do that anymore. Like, no one even cares about music videos anymore. It's so sad. And I still love music videos, honestly. Taylor Swift, honestly, the You Belong With Me music video, like, that's just peak millennial Gen Z core, no? I also loved Rihanna's music videos. I remember when S&M by Rihanna, she had the music video and everyone was like gagged over it. They were like, how dare she release something like this? And it was age restricted on YouTube and it had me crashing out because anytime something was labeled as controversial or inappropriate, it made me want to watch it more because I was a curious little kid. And I remember I downloaded the Vivo app on my iPod Touch eventually to actually go watch it. And I was definitely not supposed to be watching it, but also I was so young that I didn't even understand why it was inappropriate. Like, I was seeing Perez Hilton like piss on some lawn, and I was like, okay, yeah, that's like normal. Like, okay. I would see like Rihanna tied up or whatever, and I'm just like, okay, cool. But like, why is this inappropriate? Like, I don't even understand. And I guess if we're going to talk about 2009 to 2012, I have to talk about Michael Jackson because this is also tied to not only music videos, but tabloid magazines. My parasocial relationship with Michael Jackson is very, very interesting because I, like many other kids, had a deep, deep fear of him for a very long time. The way I first ever knew of his existence is very interesting because I first knew of him through a tabloid magazine. Whenever I would go to grocery stores, I would always see the crazy tabloid magazines, and the first time I saw him was on the cover of a tabloid magazine at the grocery store. And I didn't know that he was a man. I literally thought he was like a sickly woman. And I was like, who is this sickly woman on the cover of a magazine? And my best friend at the time, my childhood best friend at the time, her name is Michaela, but her name is spelled like Michael with an A. So then when I would see Michael Jackson on the cover of a magazine written out, I was like, oh, I guess Michaela without an A is also a name. Mind you, English is not my first language, so I just made these little assumptions up, okay? Just leave me alone. I didn't put it together. And also, Michael Jackson looks extremely androgynous. Can we admit that when he was older? So that's how I knew him. I didn't know he was a singer, I didn't know any of his music or anything. But when he passed away, obviously it was a very big deal. I don't remember where I was when Michael Jackson died personally because I didn't know him like that. But this is so random, you guys, okay? My parents and I went on a trip. I think my brother was there too. I don't remember. But we went on a trip to Croatia. Okay? We went to Croatia. On this flight to Croatia, you know how sometimes there's not a screen right in front of you on your seat, like behind your airplane seat, but it's like at the top of the aisle. It was like that on the plane, right? They were playing Michael Jackson's music videos in chronological order as like a tribute to him, I guess. And that shit scared the living bejesus out of me because it's you literally start from when he was like young and he was black, and then you see his physical transformation throughout these music videos, and I was so confused. Obviously I know that now he has vitiligo and he like used makeup and he had cosmetic procedures and all that, but I was genuinely so confused as a child. I was like, how is this man transforming in front of my eyes? I was like, how does that even happen? And then it literally just scared me because he does look kind of scary. Like when he gets older, like he does look kind of scary. And I was really, really confused. And then that low key had me scared to see him on the front of magazine covers in the future. It's just such a weird introduction to Michael. And also he has a very, very unique voice, you know? So I was just like so confused. And honestly, I was like very confused as to why people were so captivated by him and all that because I was just too focused on like what he looked like as a child. Obviously, I know why he's like such a living legend now, and I've learned so much about him as an adult because his life is so fascinating. There's just so much to talk about with Michael Jackson. It was just such an odd introduction to Michael, but it was also through tabloid magazines. And I think that's also where my love for like celebrity gossip and tabloids and spilling the tea, like I loved reading the cover of these tabloid magazines. I never bought one. I used to buy those Teen Beat magazines sometimes. I remember there was one with Selena Gomez and Demi Lovato going back to this first era, and I left it on a plane ride. not the Croatia plane ride, but somewhere on another flight. And I remember being so sad. I just loved magazines. Yeah, but that was not really a thing, an interest that really became like a thing that stuck with me. Like, I don't really care for magazines now. Also, before we move on to more TV and music, I do want to say I also really became obsessed with celebrity interviews through YouTube. I remember watching so many celebrity interviews on YouTube. Some really notable ones, obviously Ellen. Like, do I need to say more? I was obsessed with Ellen. I think the world was obsessed with Ellen at that time. And I also really loved Wendy Williams, the Hot Topics. Ooh, really, really satisfied my thirst for celebrity gossip. And she also had some really good interviews back then. And there were still so many journalists that were engaging with celebrities in a way that's not really existent anymore. For example, some really notable ones. My frame of reference is always Rihanna. So she had this interview with Diane Sawyer after the entire assault happened with her and Chris Brown. And I remember that really impacted me as a child. I'm sure I didn't even really understand the gravity of what she was talking about. I just remember watching that as a kid and being like, wow, like she's so strong for like not only did she go through this, but she has to deal with it publicly and she's on this interview being so vulnerable. Like I of course I couldn't articulate that at the time because I was so young, but I remember feeling that overall emotion of like, wow, she is so strong for this. And then again, later in 2012, she also did an interview with Oprah, again, talking about her life and what happened with the entire Chris Brown incident. And even then, I was a little bit older, but even then, I was just like, wow, she is just able to be so authentically herself. And she says things in a way where she lets you into her world and her thought process of how she's been able to essentially overcome this trauma, and she's being so vulnerable, yet she's still so charismatic and she's so real. Those interviews were really impactful to me. Just continuing on, like I really loved watching celebrity interviews. That was something that I gained a really big appreciation for throughout my life, but it really started on YouTube at first. Also, you might notice throughout this episode, I'm not going to be talking a lot about movies. I would say movies are like the least influential in terms of my pop culture knowledge. There will be a couple here and there, but yeah, I'm not a huge movie girl. I love going to the movies every now and then. I used to have an AMC A-list membership, but I'm not like as pretentious and particular about movies that I watch compared to like the music that I listen to or the TV shows that I watch. But anyway, okay, we kind of got off track. But going back to this era, also around this time is when I started watching different TV channels. So I was growing out of Disney and Nickelodeon, and so I started switching to VH1, MTV, BET. I feel like this is also around the time where I should have gotten into my Bravo bag, but I never got into Bravo shows, which is so sad. Like I never really got into them, so I could never get into them as an adult. Like I feel like you have to really know them already. And by the time I was already an adult, like the peak of a lot of the Bravo shows like weren't really happening anymore, which is kind of sad, but I had VH1, MTV, and BET. Sometimes like Fuse and MTV2, but they were like kind of irrelevant. And I was also learning a lot about music that had come before my time through music TV programming. So, like on VH1, they would have this series called like Top 100 Most Influential Women in Music, or like there's Behind the Music, all these other programs where it would talk about artists that like came in the 80s or the 90s or the early 2000s that I wasn't familiar with. So VH1 was super influential to me. Like I remember I found Sade and Mary J. Blige and Alanis Morissette and Fiona Apple, Janet Jackson, all these artists that I would have never been able to discover just on my own. I would never think to just discover on my own. And behind the music, the ones that really stuck out to me were like the first one I watched was of 50 Cent, and then it was Lil Wayne, and then there was one about DMX, and there was one about Aaliyah, and there was one about Biggie Smalls, where I learned about Tupac. Like there was so much music programming that I would watch where I'm like, I would have never learned this just on my own. And I feel like that's something that's really, really missing today. Like there's not a lot of avenues in which kids can learn about the music that came before them. And I think that's really sad because there's so much to discover there, right? During this time, my music taste really started developing, not only because of music programming on like a VH1 or an MTV, but also through downloading music. Around this time is also when I first got an iPod Touch. So that means I was able to start downloading music. I never had like an iPod Nano or like an iPod Shuffle. So when I got an iPod Touch, my brother taught me how to download music. And little did I know that I was illegally downloading music. This was when I was really also starting to discover music outside of mainstream radio, which was really cool. I was learning the art of the album, truly. At first, my brother was like, just tell me what album or song you want me to download and I will send it to you. And then he got sick of me asking, so he would just send me discographies of artists. And I think he also realized that I didn't understand like albums because I wasn't listening to albums, I was listening to the radio. So then he would just send me discographies of the artists that I would talk about. So like Rihanna, Beyonce, Nicki Minaj, Britney Spears, all the pop girlies. I remember downloading like Demi Lovato and Selena Gomez's debut albums, and they were really good too, honestly. Those are the ones that were truly the most influential to me, I guess. That's when I was like actually learning about songs that I've never heard on the radio. That's how you find deep cuts, you know? I got obsessed with adding the lyrics to all of the songs. Like I would look up on AZ lyrics and copy and paste them and add them into my iTunes, make sure all of them have cover art. Like it was such a time. Oh my god. I would spend hours on the computer adding lyrics to my songs on my iPod Touch. But it was so fun, and that helped me a lot with like memorizing lyrics. You still remember them to this day, you know, through doing that. Like now I don't remember lyrics the way that I used to back in the day. Okay, so now we'll also go more into other TV shenanigans. So E was really big because of the Kardashians, obviously. But what's really interesting is I found Kim Kardashian for the first time through Chelsea Lately. And if you don't know that, that is Chelsea Handler. She's a stand-up comic. That was her talk show on E for a while. And the first interview I saw of her was with Rihanna, obviously. And then I saw her interviewing all these other celebrities, and Kim Kardashian and Kourtney Kardashian happened to be one of them. And I was like, oh my god, who are these girls? They're really pretty. And I heard that they're like reality stars or whatever. And I found out all about their lore. And that was honestly the first time that I had seen like a sex tape as a child. I was like in elementary school, and that was the first time I saw like anything like explicitly sexual like that. Of course, I watched like inappropriate music videos or whatever, but it's not like porn, you know? So yeah, that was how I discovered the Kardashians, was through a E talk show. But E was also reporting on celebrity news or Fashion Police. Oh, I was obsessed with Fashion Police. They also had a documentary series called True Hollywood Story. They had one about Lindsay Lohan. They had one about Anna Nicole Smith. It was like a documentary series, and it was so interesting. Definitely satisfied my craving of celebrity gossip. And then MTV, this was also the peak of Jersey Shore, and I was living in New Jersey at the time. Crazy, crazy, crazy.
Where's the beach?
Right there. Where else would it be?
Oh my god, we're going to the beach so bad. Love you, bye.
I am so jealous of millennials who got to be like in college during this time. But even when I was like a little elementary school girl, I knew that this was something special. Like the impact of Jersey Shore was actually so crazy. Like there's actually nothing that has been replicated in the same way as Jersey Shore. And I was obsessed. Catfish. Oh my god, I loved Catfish. Teen Wolf, I got obsessed with a little later, but I know Teen Wolf was really big on MTV as well. Teen Mom and 16 and Pregnant was also really big. I personally didn't watch those, but I know those are still influential to this day. Loved watching award shows, obviously. X Factor, specifically X Factor 2012, when the judges were L.A. Reid, Simon Cowell, Demi Lovato, and Britney Spears. Okay, bitch. Around this time when Britney Spears was coming out with Femme Fatale and hosting X Factor or judging X Factor, this was around the time when I remember her most, because when she was coming out with like Circus and all that, I was still pretty young, so I don't really remember other than listening to her on the radio. But Femme Fatale is so ingrained in my brain, and I listened to a podcast that was talking about this era a couple weeks ago, and like the way that they were revisiting the songs and I remembered them, I was like, oh my god, like it felt like I was unlocking a deep cut in my brain. And I know this time in Britney's life was like pretty dark, but I didn't know it at the time because I was still so young and I didn't know anything about Britney lore. I didn't even know what a conservatorship was. I didn't know she was under it. But I just remember this being so prominent in me learning about Britney Spears, specifically during this time with X Factor and Femme Fatale. But X Factor, that season in particular with Britney and Demi, so iconic. I think that's the only X Factor US season that was like truly relevant, because that was also when Fifth Harmony was born. That was also when Khloe Kardashian and Mario Lopez was hosting. It was just such a good time. Iconic.
But I feel like tonight there was only one person that shined.
Who was the one that clicked for you?
Oh, they should figure that out on their own. I'm not gonna say it right
know,
here.
and I think they should know so they know how to work better together.
I think that they should just all figure out you.
Okay,
Which one?
It took a little interrogation.
We all shined.
I think that was also the season when Trevi Moran from O2L, she also auditioned at the time. Crazy. Such an iconic season. And this was also Twilight era. Now, I know I said that there wouldn't be that much movie talk, but I had to bring up Twilight, because Twilight was so influential too. I was Team Jacob when I was younger because obviously he was hot. I actually saw a tweet today because Robert Pattinson recently said that no one was Team Jacob and that was just like a marketing thing, which is low-key kind of true. If you actually watch the movie, like it was never Team Jacob or Team Edward. Like it was always Edward. And someone had quoted the tweet of Robert Pattinson's quote, and they said, nobody was Team Jacob for Bella. They wanted that racially ambiguous wolf for themselves. And that's low-key so true. But I didn't care. I still loved it. I still had all the DVDs. It's just so... I feel like that was the first real, like, edgy camp vibe that I was, like, obsessed with. I never had, like, an emo phase, but I feel like my Twilight phase was, like, kind of a replacement for my emo phase. And I also really loved the Hunger Games. I wasn't as big of a Hunger Games fan until I got older. I was more of a Twilight girl, but the Hunger Games was also so fun. Just like that film, book, adaptation era, like teen novels. Ugh, loved it. Such good times. And I think we can't really finish off this era without talking about Justin Bieber and One Direction, right? Like, you're probably wondering, like, when the fuck is this bitch gonna talk about Justin Bieber and One Direction? And it's right here. But the reason why I saved them for last, personally, is because I actually never really had a huge Bieber or One Direction phase. I know, crazy. For a chronically online fangirl, that's like, then you're not even a chronically online fangirl if you weren't obsessed with Bieber and One Direction, right? But I was always very adjacent to their fandoms in a lot of ways. I became a fan of Justin Bieber more towards the next era that we're going to be talking about, when he kind of enters his douchebag era. And with One Direction, honestly, I only had a phase of like really being obsessed with them during their Take Me Home era, and that was just because my best friend at the time was obsessed with them. So I was just like, oh my god, like, okay, let me try and like be obsessed with them so that I can like match her energy or whatever. But I always liked One Direction. I thought they were always pretty cool. And yeah, they were really fun. I remember seeing so much about them on Twitter, on Tumblr, Instagram, and we're going to get into that era in the next segment. I remembered to talk about One Direction because I was talking about X Factor, but they were also really pivotal to X Factor being such a huge thing in the US too, because they were really blowing up and then they brought X Factor to the US, and I thought that was really cool. I always associate like Fifth Harmony, One Direction, Little Mix, like all in that era of X Factor. And with Justin Bieber, they were obviously, he started really rising a couple years before that, and Bieber fever was all the rage. Like it was an epidemic, I fear. I liked his music, but if you notice, like the beginning of his career, it was extremely pop centric. But I was already in my R&B bag for a while, so that's the type of music that I liked. I didn't mind Justin Bieber's early music, but I wasn't obsessed with him like everyone else until later on. I genuinely became a fan of Justin through his music, and when he released Journals, do I even need to say more? I've talked about this album on my TikTok so many times because I think it's just that good. So before we close off 2009 to 2012, I will say this is like the slow rise of fandom culture online. Of course there already was that before, I'm sure, with MySpace and everything, but when fandom communities were starting to aggregate on Instagram, on Tumblr, on Twitter, that was truly like another beast. Like that is something that we genuinely have to save a separate section for, okay? Because 2009 to 2012, I would say it was more Facebook, YouTube centric, at least to me. And some people were already on Twitter, but I started getting on Twitter, I started getting on Instagram and Tumblr all like towards the end of 2012 to 2013. That was when it was truly a cultural shift. I truly think that I could do a whole episode in and of itself between 2013 to 2017. This is when social media, online fandom communities became such a huge thing, but it also still occupied a very specific part of the internet. Like it didn't feel like everything felt parasocial and dystopian. It still felt a little optimistic and it still felt like there was community building there. It's so different to how like Twitter feels like now. I feel like every corner of Twitter feels like stan dystopian parasocial slop, you know, but that was like a very specific part of the internet, and if you didn't want to see it you can avoid it. But now I feel like it feels a little bit unavoidable. So I would say this birth of the internet was kind of the catalyst to what we have now, but it used to be good. Like I swear, I feel like people, I obviously stand Twitter and parasocial behavior gets a bad rap for a lot of valid reasons, but there were also so many good things that came out of that as well during this time. This is also around the time when things were switching in terms of physical media and digital downloading to streaming. If you guys are into pop culture like me, I would definitely recommend a podcast called Beyond the Blind. I'm sure some of my followers have listened to them. They have an episode specifically talking about streaming and how it affected the way in which we watch TV and watch movies, how binge watching became a thing. They have a whole episode talking about streaming and how it affected the way in which culture changed because the way that we consume media had changed. They do such a good job of articulating what changed around this time because I feel like it really is so pivotal. Okay, so based on how I started navigating social media around this is around the time when the Disney icons, you know, like Selena, Demi, Miley, they were all growing up. They were all kind of rebelling against this Disney image. They wanted to break out of it. Demi had broken out of it a little earlier because she was struggling and went to rehab. I think around 2010, and she had went to rehab. I remember, oh my god, this is technically 2009 to 2012 because this was before Demi was on X Factor, but I remember when Demi first came out with Skyscraper, and that album, it was such a big deal because she had come out of rehab, and it was such a big deal that she was like coming back. It was her redemption arc, essentially. We know now that she was definitely not clean, but it was very impactful for me at the time because that made me realize like people should not be demonized for having mental health struggles or drug problems. that was one of the very first times that I realized, like, oh, people can really come out of this and redeem themselves in a way where they can speak out about it, but also set a good example for people. And of course, like I said, we know that she wasn't clean at the time, but that was an image and that was a message that really helped me understand that a lot of people go through these struggles, and a lot of people, and we should be more empathetic towards these people because you never know what they're going through. I think that was like the first seedlings of me understanding like the complexities of mental health and things like that. And honestly, I really, really commend Demi for it because she was really the first from her generation to do it. And it sparked a lot of important conversations. But yeah, the Disney kids were growing up. Justin Bieber and Selena were dating, and then they started getting a little messy. Miley also started getting a little messy. And it was interesting because people were still framing it as like these kids are going crazy, and like, okay, to be fair, Selena Gomez always got a good edit, but with Miley, they thought she was going batshit. But if you really look back at Miley's career, I would love to do an episode on her one day too, because she was always kind of a little crazy, but like in such a fun way. Like she was so carefree. She did not give a fuck. Today, I was on Twitter and there's this picture of her where she got locked out of her hotel room, and she had like this sign on A4 paper and she wrote like, will fuck to get a key or something like that. And that was when Hannah Montana was airing. Like she did not give a fuck, and I loved it. I was obsessed with it. And it was such a big deal when she cut her hair because she had those long brown curly extensions. Like, that was such a time. And that was like around that was after Party in the USA, but like Can't Be Tamed era. And when she cut her hair, it was such a big deal. Like, Hannah Montana is dead. And when she cut her hair and she got like the side shaven, and like people would add the Hannah Montana logo, it was, oh my God, such a time. Miley really defined this era. I feel like when you think of 2013, you have to think of Miley Cyrus because that VMAs performance, she looked fucking ridiculous, but also it became iconic. That was one of the last, I would say, VMAs that I feel like is ingrained in everyone's brain. Like everyone was watching it at that time. I think the real last one that people remember watching was probably 2016 or 2015. Again, centered around Miley because she was hosting the VMAs, and Nicki said,
Back to this bitch that had a lot to say about me the other day in the press. Miley, what's good?
We're all in this industry. We all do interviews, and we all know how they manipulate. Nicki, congratulations. And just because the VMAs have already started doesn't mean that the voting is done.
I remember watching that and I was like, oh my God. Like, I can't believe I'm witnessing this right now. Such big deal. And just like the VMAs in general was so iconic. Obviously, I forgot to talk about Kanye interrupting Taylor at the VMAs, Lil Mama stepping on stage with Jay-Z and Alicia Keys. I actually did not watch this award show in particular, but I remember it happening. I was still a little bit young, 2009, so I wasn't really watching award shows like that yet. But the VMAs were so special, and this is around the time I feel like 2013 to 2017 was so iconic because it was transitioning into the time of streaming. But when you wanted to watch award shows, if you wanted to watch like reality shows coming up on the premiere time, you still watched cable. Like, you still had to watch cable. People still had cable while also adding like a $5 plan to Netflix. You know, this was around the time when we kind of had everything. We had social media, we had streaming, and we had cable. We had all of it, and it was so fun. Like, when I was watching the VMAs 2013, I remember like scrolling my Twitter timeline, seeing what everyone's talking about during the commercial breaks, you know? I loved it. I loved it so much. And it was really I think this was a very short period of time where we still had a monoculture, but then we had the internet to see what everybody was talking about. And I think the VMAs is like a really good measurement of that, because I can remember like Beyonce, when she announced that she was pregnant in 2011 during the VMAs, that moment I remember was like the most tweeted about moment of all time or something. And it was crazy back then. There was still a bit of monoculture here where at the end of the day, everyone was going to watch the Grammys, everyone was going to watch the VMAs. Also felt like so much more connected because of social media. But now we don't really have that anymore, which is kind of sad. The VMAs were still iconic. Miley was doing her thing. We Can't Stop, Won't Stop. Uh, Selena Gomez and Justin Bieber. I I could do multiple episodes about Justin Bieber, and I could do multiple episodes about his relationship with Selena. Earlier today, I was going on Twitter and there was an entire thread about these Tumblr Twitter accounts that were exposing the fuck out of Justin and Selena's relationship. Like, and I was going through the thread like I would like it was 2013 all over again. Like, if you guys remember the story rares, if you remember the truth about JB, like all these accounts were exposing the hell out of Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez's relationship. And I remembered this. And whenever I watch old Justin Bieber deep dives or podcasts about him or Selena, they don't talk about this because a lot of the people who do deep dives on this now are millennials. So they remember them like being crazy, getting back together and breaking up and like doing all that. But they don't remember like the deep parts of the internet that I was a part of. It was wild. And I think this is also a good segue into more of the social media rabbit holes that were being created on Twitter and Tumblr, because there were so many people who would make like exposing accounts, and I'm sure these are people that are adjacent to these celebrities, right? Because they had like leaked photos and things like that. So like the Story Rares or Jelena something, there were all these accounts that were like exposing their asses or like stepping outside of their relationship, whatever, and talking about their friend groups and all this other stuff. It was crazy. And I was looking back at it now and seeing how people were quoting this thread, and they were like, wow, it's crazy how everything that they were saying like came to light later on. And so that means it had to be someone that was like kind of adjacent to their inner circle at least. And there were so many accounts like this, making conspiracy theories about Larry from One Direction. There was like the Stan confessions. Do you guys remember the Stan confessions on Tumblr? I feel like I'm the only one who fucking remembers this shit. But they used to have people submit like their opinions about certain celebrities, and they would just like put it on, like put a little text in front of a photo of them and stuff. And it would just be different opinions. There would just be so many fan conspiracies and celebrities at this time because they weren't using social media as a business. Celebrities were still able to use social media in a way where it was just them interacting with other people. And these celebrities, I know for a fact, I don't know for a fact, but I'm sure, I'm like 99% sure that these celebrities were checking these pages that were exposing them or like creating conspiracy theories about them. The Louis and Harry rumors, obviously we know that the boys probably knew all about that. And I was never a huge One Direction fan, like I said, but those theories, like when you look at them, I have so many friends that used to be One Direction fans back in the day, right? All of them still are convinced that they dated. And the evidence is pretty damning, like I won't lie. The Gaylor conspiracies. Oh my god, the conspiracies about Taylor Swift dating Carly Kloss or Diana Agron, like there were so many theories on Tumblr, and Taylor used to be on Tumblr all the time. So like all these fan conspiracies, and you knew that the celebrities like knew about it and they would read this shit. There's no way that Justin and Selena did not know about the Story Rares or exposing SMG or Jelena, whatever. Like I'm sure that they knew that their text messages and all this like information was getting leaked. There was just no way. There was just no way that they didn't know. And you just had to be there. Like this is truly one of those things like you really just had to be there to understand what was going on. And a lot of people were on different pockets of the internet exposing this shit. I would say this was our generation's version of blind items. Like, truly. Millennials talk about going onto these different gossip websites and finding out different, like, rumors about whatever. These Tumblr and Twitter accounts were our blind items. We didn't know who the fuck were behind these pages, but we knew something about it felt legit. And they were. Because a lot of them came to light later on in time, just like blind items do. Take me back to these times, because I feel like now, first, celebrities have a different way of navigating the internet now. And I feel like with the amount of misinformation and just slop that goes around on the internet now, people would just take things and completely run with it. And it's just the way that we interact and engage with celebrity gossip and tabloids is just so different now. Like, tabloids don't even exist anymore. There used to be a hierarchy of celebrity gossip back in the day, and I feel like it was so different. Continuing on, 2013, I would say, is most defined by not only Miley Cyrus, but Beyonce. I feel like people forget the impact of her self-titled album because she's just had so many other impactful moments. But when she dropped self-titled, that truly shocked the world. I remember where I was when Beyonce dropped. Like, I feel like this is one of those moments where if you are really into music, if you were really into pop culture at this time, you remember where you were when Beyonce dropped self-titled. It changed the way that the music industry as a whole releases music now. Like, surprise drops weren't really a thing until Beyonce did it first. I just remember it being such a big deal. And this album, too, was also a really pivotal shift in Beyonce's career because she was stepping away from, like, the conventional corporate pop, I would call it. Of course, Beyonce's career before this wasn't just corporate, but it was very kind of predictable in a way. And before this album, she released the album 4, which didn't do as commercially well. Personally, 4 is one of my favorite Beyonce albums of all time, but before self-titled dropped, a lot of people were actually speculating, is this the downturn of Beyonce's career? Like, she's not, like, now she has a kid and now she's like probably gonna focus on her family. Like, there were talks like that at the time. And then boom, self-titled drops, and it was such a cultural moment. And I'd also argue that this album signified like a foundational change in Beyonce's music and image as well, because she was making a lot more explicit music in this album. Like, of course, she's made like sensual, sexual songs in the past, but it's never been as explicit until self-titled. And I definitely think that was an intentional statement because this was after she had Blue Ivy, and this is when people were speculating on where her career was going to go. And before she dropped self-titled, she also released Bow Down, and people were up in arms about the fact that she dropped a song telling bitches to bow down. So I think she was really leaning in to being a little controversial, which wasn't the norm for Beyonce at that time. And it was so cool. She had a music video for every single song. That was crazy. Ugh, obsessed. And you would see the pink letters everywhere. Like, everybody was doing it. It was so iconic. Like, just her album being a black screen and pink Beyonce pink in pink letters, iconic. That was such a moment. Now, also, this is around the time when YouTubers were also having stands. If I just say these names, you'll know what I'm talking about. I don't even have to really explain, but we'll get into it. Tyler Oakley, Troye Sivan, Marcus Butler, Zoella, Joe Sugg, Casper Lee, Dan and Phil. All of these people had their own little community. They were all collaborating with each other too, and they had stands. They for real had stands. And Dan and Phil, they came out last year officially as a couple. But their conspiracies were also just as rampant as like the Larry One Direction conspiracies. Like, truly, Tumblr was the wild, wild west. There was so much going on Tumblr. And now let's dive into Tumblr actually. Tumblr was a space where like the cooler celebrities would kick it, you know? Taylor Swift had a Tumblr. Kylie Jenner had a Tumblr. Kylie Jenner also, I want to say, I think she was able to really give Kim a run for her money at one point because she was not only able to really tap into social media in a different way compared to her sisters because obviously they're a different generation, but she was able to bridge that gap between just mainstream celebrities because obviously her family was becoming a part of the celebrity world at this point. They weren't really tapped into like the younger online communities like Kylie was. I will definitely do an episode on Kylie one day because I think her rise to fame was so interesting. And of course, there's a lot of ways in which she basically just copied and stole a lot of things. Like a lot of her aesthetic was stolen from a lot of Black women, most notably Black China and Heather Sanders, who were also influencers of their time. But she was able to mix kind of like Black culture that her family was starting to become adjacent to at this time. They were kind of aligning themselves more with like the Black music industry, but Kylie was also tapped into the trends that were happening within her age group. So like the flower crowns and like the boho Coachella look, like all of it, like she knew how to put them together in a way where everyone was obsessed with her. She was a cultural figure during this time, truly, because of the way that she was able to pick and choose and mesh these different cultures in between. There was still like a divide back then between celebrity and like online influencers, but I feel like now it's all kind of mixed up, right? And I think Kylie had a big influence in that. So continuing off of Tumblr, I would say there were just so many moments on Tumblr, like The Fault in Our Stars, any John Green books, enough said. Like the impact that they had was so crazy. Like, what was the fucking thing? Okay. Oh my god, The Fault in Our Stars. That was also like a crazy moment. A lot of the CW shows, I know a lot of people were obsessed with Gossip Girl, The Vampire Diaries. I was more of a dude in a way that I was watching like Arrow and The Flash and The 100. Again, to bring up Teen Wolf, I got into Teen Wolf around this time. I was obsessed with Teen Wolf, even though that isn't the CW. And just, I think the Tumblr aesthetic, not only Kylie, not only Taylor Swift, but Lana Del Rey, Halsey, they were becoming really big during this time. The 1975 Arctic Monkeys, like they defined like Tumblr music aesthetic, I would say. Some more like Melanie Martinez, Marina and the Diamonds, like that just screams Tumblr to me. I also think Tumblr is how I discovered Odd Future. That entire era is so Tumblr and Twitter coded to me, especially like the donut logo. Also Nirvana. I know obviously they're a 90s rock band, but their aesthetic, their shirts were like like our generation was obsessed with the Nirvana logo for some reason, including myself. And I think that is also really indicative of the obsession with nostalgia. Nostalgia became a huge part of Tumblr as well. Like the 90s aesthetic of like looking at 90s Leonardo DiCaprio and Johnny Depp and Corey Haim, like all these River Phoenix, all these heartthrob actors became huge on Tumblr as well. There was like another space for like these older stars to kind of have another online rise. And of course they're always popular, right? But I think the younger generation was using Tumblr as a way to like look back at the old things. Around this time, I also had a really big Leonardo DiCaprio phase after I watched Twilight. I mean, not Twilight. I watched Titanic for the first time. I remember around this time, I was in middle school. I was like genuinely sad that like I did not live through 90s Leo. I was just like, how could this guy look like this? And like I would see pictures of him current day on Wikipedia and be like, wow, like I can't believe I didn't live through 90s Leo. And so Tumblr would be the place where I would go and like find old photos of him, learn more about him. There was different ways to be parasocial, and those were the outlets that I had. And I also went through another High School Musical phase around this time because of Tumblr. So I rewatched the High School Musical series in middle school, and I was like, oh my god, like this shit is just so good. Like I could not deal. Like I was just like, oh my god, this is like such a good time. And I got obsessed with Zach and Vanessa all over again because I was just like, oh my god, they were so in love. Like I just like couldn't believe how in love they seemed to be. The chemistry was insane, and they dated for 5 years. Like they dated for a few years after the franchise had ended. So I was like, oh my god, they were truly in love. Like what happened? And then she was dating Austin Butler by this time, and I was like, oh my god, like they're also very cute, and I want to support her. I was so crazy back then. I was like, oh, but like Zach, Zach must be so sad seeing her with Austin Butler now and all this other shit. And there was literally a Tumblr page called like the Hudgens Sisters Confessions. Oh my god, this is also like connecting back to Kylie, okay? There was a Tumblr page where they would do something similar to the Stan Confessions where like fans of the Hudgens sisters could like post their opinions and submit them. And this user would also like answer questions about them. There will be questions like, what do you think of Vanessa and Austin? And they'll be like, I really like them together. I think Zach and Vanessa were great, but like she's moved on, whatever, whatever. And I think Stella, Vanessa Hudgens' little sister, was also dating someone, and there was like drama about that. But Stella also used to be friends with Kylie Jenner, Jordan, Stassi, and I think she dated Jaden Smith at a certain point. Like they were all a friend group. And oh my god, I also have to obviously talk about the Misfits. They call themselves the Misfits, which is like so fucking 2014. Like it's just so like, of course these teenagers would be calling themselves the Misfits rep. At a certain point, I remember that they all changed their Instagram usernames to like, I put the blank on my back. I remember Kylie's was, I put the district on my back. I put the industry on my back. Like, I remember this so vividly. It was so fun. I think this period of the internet was genuinely so fun. And I think it's most ingrained in my brain because this is around like adolescence. And I feel like that is like core memories. But also, the internet was still fun at this time, and we had streaming, and we still had cable. Like, we had everything, and it was so good for a short period of time. So, now moving on from Tumblr and Twitter and Instagram, now we can talk a little bit more about streaming. So, before, I was primarily just illegally downloading a lot of my music, but now Spotify became a thing. Apple Music became a thing, and I think with music discovery, it became a lot more self-curated. It wasn't dependent on the radio and like the top hits and the charts. Like they don't, like charts don't really matter anymore, if I'm being honest. And there's a lot of different implications to that. Like now we know that there's a lot of bot farms for streaming and things like that. But I think this is when a lot of people started to separate into their own little niches where like not everyone is listening to the same thing. So continuing on for my own fangirl history, I also had my own YouTuber stan phase back in the day. Like I really loved O2L and Connor Franta, Kian and JC when they stepped out, and I also really was obsessed with the Dolan twins for a long time. I actually found the Dolan twins through Kian and JC, and I actually stan them before Sister Squad. I also really started loving Emma Chamberlain later after the Sister Squad. So I kind of missed that whole era because, and now we're going to segue into the next and final segment, which is 2018 to 2020. 2020 is when I turned 18. So a lot of my standing fangirl shenanigans kind of subsided a little bit after COVID. But also I feel like the way fan culture and the way we engage with celebrities changed so much because of COVID. And I will definitely also do an episode on that in the future. So I had really been obsessed with the Dolan twins from like 2016, 2017. And they also actually really influenced my music taste, because they also listen to like a lot of hip hop and trap and just like a lot of fun, summery 2016 vibey music. And I think I got a lot of inspiration from them because they used to they used to constantly post Snapchats of them lip syncing to so many songs, and I would like save every single one of them. Like it was it was so funny. That was before they started hanging out with James Charles and Emma Chamberlain. I kind of stopped really following them around that time because I got into K-pop. Yes, of course I had a K-pop phase. I would also say I grew up with K-pop. I remember like second generation, like Big Bang 21, Girls' Generation, and all that. But I wasn't like super obsessed with them. But I always like remembered them, and like I obviously didn't have a lot of friends who knew what K-pop was. So like I just never was like super engaged until 2018 personally. By this time I had already moved back to Korea. So I moved back to Korea in 2014 actually. I was starting to engage more with like K-pop and the Korean music scene, but it was very casual. Like I was listening to more Korean R&B, like Dean, Zion T, Crush, but I wasn't really into K-pop yet until 2018. So that's when I started really getting into my K-pop bag, and that was really fun. I loved third gen. Third gen was really fun. BTS, GOT7, EXO, Red Velvet, Blackpink. They were all so fun at the time. Around this time also, like 2017, 2018 was really when I started to actually like apply certain skills to my real life. So I learned how to video edit because I loved making video edits on Instagram. I was never on Vine to make edits or anything, but oh my god, we didn't even talk about Vine. But personally for me, Vine wasn't, of course, like so many memes came out of Vine, but I didn't really I wasn't a big fan of like any of the Vine stars. I know the Dolan twins first started on Vine, but I first found them on YouTube. But I started video editing and posting them on Instagram. But then I also started video editing for like projects in school. So I also really loved doing a lot of cultural analysis type of content. Not content, but like that's what I liked reading about and consuming online, especially once I started getting into K-pop because I started to see how much of a cultural difference there was between like international fans, Korean fans, how the Korean music industry works versus the Western music industry. It was all super interesting to me. And I also really loved like watching video essays during this time and just learning more in depth about the media that I was consuming. And that's how I realized like things like this podcast and what it's going to be is really what I wanted, was really what I was so interested in. I think that's also why I was so obsessed with like these fan conspiracy pages on Tumblr or like exposing pages, because I wanted to learn more about like the behind the scenes, like the underbelly of this entertainment industry that I was so obsessed with. And I think also 2018 to 2020, this is around the time when a lot of different music subgenres were happening. So like a lot of different alternative hip hop, R&B genres were spreading. Like the SoundCloud era was such a big thing, and I personally I like listened to a little bit of Lil Uzi Vert, and who else was there? Like XXX Tentacion. Like I listened to some of their music, but I wasn't super tapped in honestly because I was busy listening to K-pop. But yeah, I think you can really see how like the landscape was changing. And around this time, I don't know if I was really obsessed with any shows. I remember 13 Reasons Why was such a big thing, and I think that was also so important to like mark the boom of streaming. I think that I don't remember when 13 Reasons Why came out. Was that 2017? That was also where TV was starting to change, like less cable. I feel like people weren't really paying attention as much. And I also feel like Instagram started to change around this time. Instagram was always kind of a little curated, I would say. It was more real and authentic, but people still liked curating a vibe on their Instagram. Like Kylie Jenner is the first one I think of when I think of a curated Instagram. They want, like, this is when we started using aesthetic as like an adjective. Like, oh, this is so aesthetic. This is so aesthetic. Like, I want this aesthetic. That's kind of when things started to become curated on Instagram. I would say that was probably like 2015 to maybe like 2018, yeah. But then after 2018, I would say it started to become more leaning towards short form, where we had this endless algorithm on TikTok in 2019, and that just became everything, especially during COVID. Around this time is also when the commodification of the fangirl really started to emerge. Like the Gen Z fangirls were starting to want to apply this to potentially their own careers and marketing and social media. It became an economy essentially. It was no longer a community, it became an economy. And I think that's kind of where I want to end it there. I mean, there's so much to say about that era. 2018 was kind of like the beginning of the end, I would say, honestly. Like we still didn't realize that it was the beginning of the end, but it was the beginning of the end, you know? Yeah, I mean, that's kind of my entire fangirl history. And I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me just talk about these random fucking internet niches for over an hour. These are the kind of things that I really want to dive into with this podcast series. I think this is so interesting. There's so much to talk about when it comes to these things. I mean, clearly, we've ran over an hour. And I think there's so much to say about them, about how it impacts your life and how it impacts other people's life, how it impacts reflections of our society. Yeah, I hope you guys learned a little something. I hope this was a little bit nostalgic and it brought you back. I'm sure a lot of you will remember a lot of these things because I've been on TikTok for a while now and I've made videos talking about these things and they're like, "Oh my god, remember this and remember that." I know you guys were on these communities just like I was, and it was really fun. I miss it. And it's just so interesting how kind of all these spaces are kind of gone now. It's kind of sad. Even though we have all of it, like we still have cable, we still have streaming, we still have social media, but the environment is just rotted now. And it's just kind of sad, but it's fun to look back at. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. This was really just more off the cuff, talking about old pop culture things. But I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys are excited for the next episodes just as much as I am. And I will see you guys next time. Bye.